All right, everybody, we're just going to give it a couple of seconds, make sure everyone has a quick chance to join. I know we've been having some fun issues with links today. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Billow. I'm a Blackbaud Customer Success Manager. Thank you so much for attending Blackbaud Dev Days. We're thrilled to have you here. And we have an exciting speaker today joining us, Jeremy Reynolds, who I will now pass it over to.
Hey, can everybody see me? Can I get some thumbs up from everybody? I think so. All right, let me know. So welcome to the show, and let's get going. We're going to talk a little bit about getting fancy with Blackbaud checkout for TeamRaiser. I'm Jeremy. I am the senior software engineer at Zero, the Zero Prostate Cancer. Been with the organization for, I don't know, almost coming up on a decade, and have about 20 years experience in the sector. A lot of it lately has been with Luminate, but also with other website platforms and working those two together. And today what I'd like to share with everybody is what our customization was with Luminate Online and the Blackbaud checkout. So a couple years back, Blackbaud released a new checkout experience that's been optimized for how people go through it, and has additional payment methods added to it, like Apple Pay and Venmo and PayPal. And we had looked at it originally at Zero. We really wanted to be able to get Apple Pay, and we wanted to be able to get Venmo on there. But the challenge with it is it was a really markedly different experience for people. Very streamlined and very optimized for conversion. But when it came to what you could actually capture on any donation form, it was a bit more limited. So if you look here, a little tiny picture here, but on the left, you can see what our normal donation form was at Zero for our run walk events. What we wanted to do was get Venmo on and keep that kind of simplicity with the TeamRaiser's version of that mobile platform, but also customize it to make it a little bit simpler, a little more streamlined, and have some other customizations. So we're going to take a look at a bunch of different pieces with that. But before I do, a little bit of a call out. Danger. We have, if anybody was able to go to the pubs recently for the Luminate Online, Blackbaud is actually coming up with the next generation iteration of their mobile checkout experience. So a lot of what I'm going to be reviewing here is actually, some of it's going to actually change once they implement that. We don't necessarily know what the timing is, and we don't necessarily know exactly how it'll impact us with the implementation. We're going to stay tuned for that. But just a quick warning with anything that I'm reviewing here. A lot of these customizations range from being something that's extremely straightforward and is kind of typical within Luminate. They go all the way up to things that really would void your warranty, that when you do it, you really kind of take ownership over what you've done, because it's so far outside of the box product that you really have to have your hands around it. In this session, we're going to be covering all of that. And the good news is that the good stuff is still good. We don't have to worry too much about the fact that a lot of the technique that I've overviewed for actually putting the form on the page is going to change. There are still some customizations that you'll see looking at the original thing here, where we've got pictures of people, where we've got a pull quote from people, where we've got this kind of generalized experience. The new checkout form is actually going to work with both the one on the left and the one in the middle. And again, we don't know all those details, but some of this, there's going to be a little something for everybody in this presentation, talking about everything from how did we get those pictures on there, which will not go away, to how did we actually play with the form itself, some of which is going to change as we go. So first thing that we wanted to do when we were customizing this, if you've ever used the Luminate Online, the Blackbaud checkout, a couple of the things that were really limited in the original out of the box is that there's a bunch of different little pop-ups. So in the normal one, when you would pull open your donation form and you would click on the button, it basically showed a handful of buttons and then a donate button. And then it'd make a pop-up that you see here on the right that would ask you, do you want your credit card or debit card? You click that and it'd give you another pop-up. And that was to actually do the payment process, right? And it would serve a different pop-up if you're doing Venmo and PayPal versus if you're doing Apple Pay or a credit card or an ACH and bank transaction. We wanted to simplify that by just putting everything in a single form. So we're not going to get into the detail of exactly how we did that. I'm going to have a session tomorrow where we actually will break down at 2:15 tomorrow. We're going to have a workshop session that actually looks at some of the code behind all of this. But in short, one of the changes we needed to make this simpler was to remove things so that if you're a user, you go onto our page and you see there's just a form. It's got the person who's fundraising, so you know you're in the right place. You choose the amount, you choose the payment method, hit donate, and boom, right to the payment screen. The second change we had was that out of the box, the donor form actually had a limitation because PayPal actually doesn't allow people to do a transaction covering fee. So because of that, PayPal and Venmo actually do not allow you to have a add-on fee to let people cover the price of their transaction. So we worked around that. What we did was we actually took a little hidden system that actually changes the dollar amount if you click a little checkbox, and then it does a PayPal Venmo payment without doing that extra fee. We kind of change the amount without the person having to realize exactly how it's going. They don't know how the sausage is made, but it still works with the PayPal and Venmo. The other thing about this is we've actually been doing this in that original form for years. So while the Blackbaud checkout form out of the box doesn't really come with a upgrade my donation to upsell it to pay the fee, right? The old form doesn't do that out of the box either, but there is a technique for people to do it. If you can get access to my slide deck after the show, I keep calling it the show, the presentation, you'll see that this actual Blackbaud community post, if you go on the Blackbaud community, you'll actually be able to see a breakdown of exactly how do we on a standard donation form, the original donation to classic donation form, how do we actually add that transaction fee? And that's something that anybody that has a little bit of a background in HTML and a little bit of background in jQuery and JavaScript can put together. It's slightly complicated, but in the grand scheme of things you can do, it's not as complicated as everything else. I'd maybe give it a 3 out of 5. Here's another change we made. We've wanted this for many, many years, and this is something that's always been possible within Luminate, but it's not super straightforward. It's a little bit complicated to do it. What we did was we added in a question during the registration for people saying, why are you fundraising? Why are you trying to, what has motivated you to be a part of this? And so part of the registration flow for anybody who comes into the site, they actually fill out a fill in the blank statement. And then when you go to their fundraising page, that's actually going to spit out right underneath their picture, which these are both things that don't come out of the box. We had to use the API to do it. Bruce, I did do this all in-house. I'm not entirely sure. There are a lot of really, really good industry partners in here. And I will be covering tomorrow in that session some of how the sausage is made. So this question, though, adds it in, and then we just use a combination of API magic to pull the picture in there, and some of the S tags that are built in the system to spit out what their reason for fundraising is. Pretty cool. Another thing that we did on this customization, we had made our site, I think originally 4 or 5 years ago, right before COVID struck is when we actually had updated our site. Back then, some of the features we put on our site were not built into any of the software that you could get off the shelf like Bootstrap. So part of this project to do some of the cool stuff we did, like a full background image, or to use some of the more modern JavaScript like pop-up modals and things in Bootstrap, we actually went through on just this donation form, made a customized page builder template, or not page builder, page wrapper that only applies to the donation form. So that's a little bit of a customization we had made. Donor Advice Sons, on Thursday, there's going to be a session from Chariot, and they're going to go in depth with this. We work directly with Chariot, and we work directly with them to kind of work around some of these customizations we've made. Out of the box, Chariot has, and this is true of a lot of third-party vendors too, right? Like we also use Double the Donation. They have something that comes out of the box, and it's kind of copy their code in, paste it in place, and it just works out of the box. Back to that, you may void your warranty statement earlier. Anytime you actually start ending a bunch of different customizations, you break all of that copy paste stuff. So what we ended up doing was working directly with developers at Chariot. They were really fantastic to make sure that it worked with this. And we just added a button that looked like all the other buttons. If you weren't familiar with Luminate and didn't know its capabilities, a person who's fundraising would never know the difference between there's actual multiple forms getting pulled, it's actually going through a third party or whatever. We just made it look like everything else on the system. Number 6, this is part of Bootstrap. We updated the form to add a little bit of a tweak to their out-of-the-box messages. So out of the box, the Blackbaud checkout didn't have a little message that you could dismiss by clicking the X box. It didn't necessarily have like the little SVG icons on it. So we did a little bit of customization with that. We'll get into tomorrow, but that was actually something that took a little bit of fanciness to add Bootstrap's kind of customizations into it. Another one we did was Double the Donation. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. We had added Chariot. Double the Donation is a great service that has been very, very successful for us at getting people to actually add their employer. It's always been a cumbersome process in the past to try to follow up with them. One of the things Double the Donation does on their standard forms and even on their Blackbaud checkout is they actually put this little widget on there that lets you just type in your employer. Again, my customizations broke all that. So I went into the code a little bit. I don't know if we'll cover it tomorrow or not because of time, but customize that to also work with everything. I know I'm beating a drum here, but again, it's really one of those, it's definitely worth going in and making these customizations. Just realize that as you do them, you kind of now own the changes going forward. And so that can be doable, but make sure that you, as you work with a vendor, one of the great third-party products out here are third-party vendors like Cathexis and DNL, make sure that you're also accounting for the fact that as new things come in the future, you'll need to respond to them. Third thing was PDF links. Out of the box, Luminate does actually have the ability to send customized PDFs to people with a receipt for their donations. And we could actually, with a little bit of noodling around, figure out what that receipt ID was going to be and spit it out onto the page. So when somebody actually successfully donates, they get all 3 of these things. They get a link straight to their PDF, which will also be emailed to them. They get that Double the Donation thing, and they also get the customized success messages. And then, of course, if all else fails. So one of the things that happens with Luminate is you had last year's event series and you unpublished it because now you've got a new event in that same city. And what ends up happening is you get a message saying this donation form is no longer published or no longer accessible, or it gives you some sort of other error. So one of the things that we customized on this form was we actually did a little bit of a check to say if something goes wrong, we had an alternate way to load the form up. And if that didn't work, we just throw some buttons up saying you can go get a regular donation to the event. We could actually go figure out what the next event is and send them over there, or we can just go to a list of all of our run blocks. And of course, as we're doing all this, one of the great things about using something like Bootstrap is it makes it so that all of your stuff kind of out of the box is a little more likely to not break when you're looking at a mobile device. So this one is definitely responsive. One of the things when we're trying to cram so much stuff into this desktop, this is something I have to remind myself every single time I open up my web editor. I'm looking at this on a HD monitor meant for a graphic designer. The average person that is coming to our event is somewhere between 30 and 50 years old, and it's probably looking at it on their iPhone. So it's always really, really important anytime you're doing customizations, and really even if you're not doing customizations, to make sure that whatever you've built is accessible to people, that you're meeting the well-established standards of, are all of my text big enough to read? Are the colors in high enough contrast that I can actually see things if I'm sight impaired, right? If I'm on device, am I actually, we've got this big, long, wide, little tiny things. Are my fingers going to click on the right thing when I click on it? Make sure that things, when you've actually made them customized, that they're actually going to be graceful in how they show up on other size devices. Flying through a lot of this, leaving some time for questions at the end if you have them. But there are some limitations even with all these customizations that we have with this Blackbaud checkout system. We don't know how many of these are going to change in the coming new re-release of our system. Some things that we do know are coming. Right there at the bottom, we've got Google Pay. They are going to actually be adding new things. If you haven't seen the pubs, this is Blackbaud has their developers come online and kind of tell you what is the roadmap for the next year. They will cover this. They'll actually show you some screenshots of it, get some good details. And if you're somebody like me who's come in and possibly made it so that everything's going to blow up if they make too big of changes, they'll also reach out to you and say, hey, Jeremy, what did you do? Are you sure that this is going to work once we re-release it, right? Some of the other things that we'd like to see that are actually built into the platform the way it is today, but just for our program's purposes, we didn't add it. Recurring gifts. Blackbaud checkout can do recurring gifts. We didn't enable that. Honor tribute. I'm not sure if it actually sends e-cards telling the person they've contributed to, but out of the box, the Blackbaud checkout does give you the ability to enable honor and tribute. And dynamic asks, that's another one. The way that we kind of hid everything to make it simpler for hitting those buttons and choosing the amount that you're giving and doing that add on your transaction fee kind of made it so that the dynamic asks weren't really doable. It would have been a pretty big effort to add those in. So the other parts of Blackbaud checkout that don't work out of the box in the way that we would ideally have it do is it's only really for peer-to-peer gifts and regular donations. It doesn't work if you're registering for an event and you have fees or you want to make a self-donation. That uses the standard limit form. Blackbaud cover. I hope this one's coming with the new one. So if you use RE, NXT, and their donation forms, you may have seen that there's actually a couple different options for how fees are calculated. There is donor cover, where the donor clicks a little checkbox like what we've kind of customized into it, or that comes out of the box if you're using a credit card or a bank transfer in the Blackbaud checkout product. The person pays for it themselves. Love it, love it, love it. Bo just said in chat that it is going to come into Illuminate and TeamRaiser. So y'all, I mean, when you got a $3 million program and you're paying, even a very minimal fee, we're talking about a lot of patients that can be helped once that's enabled. So that's really going to be a big one. And when the time comes that the new piece is released, I mean, I see it as mission critical for every nonprofit that uses Illuminate to actually take a look at if it's possible for them to implement this. So Blackbaud cover is where Blackbaud actually covers all the fees and kind of says to the person who's donating, hey, would you like to help cover the fees? If they say no, Blackbaud pays for those fees with the credit card company. The nonprofit doesn't face anything. If the donor says yes, then those Blackbaud is the one who will collect those fees to help them cover all the transaction fees for the people who said no, and also for just really making sure that they're developing a great product deep into the future. And then, of course, you've got the option of no cover at all. You're going to pay fees just like anybody else would with any kind of transaction. So Blackbaud cover is not available in this, but hot off the presses, it will be available in the new one, and that is fantastic. Another little limitation we have with the form right now is if you actually fill out the form and you have a failed attempt, this has always been a problem for any donation form. If the bank rejects your card, they don't necessarily want to let you know, we realize you've stolen this credit card. So they don't always send the best communication back to us to tell us why an event was rejected. In a perfect world, we'd be able to do that. Constituent names. One of the drawbacks on this is that the system, when you use Blackbaud checkout, is pulling from the constituent record it has on file. And so you can always have a first name and a last name, but Luminate's actually capable of putting a nickname, putting a formal salutation on there, putting in a common name. One of the things that happens with this particular form is it's going to grab all of those and throw it onto the person's donation. So for testing, I think I made my name of my account Beats, Badgers, and Battlestar Galactica. And so when I donate, even though I've put in Jeremy Reynolds as the donor on the credit card information, it says, "Thank you, Beats, Battlestar Galactica," or something like that. So that's one thing to be aware of. There's a lot of people on different tracks here talking about how they can make the Razor's Edge NXT data as good as possible. That's something where if you can clean it up in NXT or in your other CRM using Omatic or whatever you're using, if you can get that back into Luminate, it would get that through. But the way we've built this, it actually does call me Battlestar Galactica, which is, that makes me happy, but it probably wouldn't make everybody. Anonymous gifts, message to the participant, giving them an attaboy for fundraising. Those are all things that are limited to it. I just ran through an awful lot of limitations here, but I want to back up and say exactly what really is going on with this is really a fantastic expansion of what the donation system can do, right? That's right, Jason. It's really, it does show that Blackbaud is really committed to an ongoing system of, as new payments are coming out, making sure that they work in there and balancing it out with having that in the kickoff or the innovation is everywhere. One of those meetings, somebody was saying there's a commitment to people who are pro code, but there's also a commitment to people that are low code, right? Because at the end of the day, for us to do good in the world, we can't be so stuck in doing these kind of deep, intricate things, but we don't want to be shut out of what those new features are. With Blackbaud checkout out of the box, we wanted to kind of have it done our way, but even out of the box, it actually does do some pretty good stuff. And Apple Pay is actually a really important feature to add to it. Now they've got Venmo added to it. Google Pay is coming in the future. And they've always built a system where if you don't have it customized or you have it customized and things don't exactly work out as planned, they still have the old stuff that you can fall back to and still have a pretty good product that still gets things like the Chariot integration. It still gets most of the payments, and so it is all still there even as we upgraded it. So all of this, how'd it go? I just got permission yesterday to share it. This is not financial figures. This is just a breakdown of exactly how many people are choosing each of these options. And it doesn't include Chariot just because the way that that's built didn't really work super easily with my reports. This is a standard Luminate Online report. If you do a report for X checkout, you will end up getting a list of all the different sources. And so you can do that, throw it into a pivot table in Excel and get a nice little pie chart like this. And here's the big takeaway. We were very, very focused on getting Venmo added to the product, and that's huge. The way that people like to use Venmo is pulling it up on their app and just sending it to another person without going through a donation form, and that's usually what we see. People do use that Venmo experience on this form, but it's only around 3%. Apple Pay, though, there's your headliner. Apple Pay is so much easier an experience for everybody. It still has the donor cover built into it, but you open it up on your Apple device, you click it, and you're done. It's that easy. Credit card is still leading the way. PayPal is actually pretty big too. Surprisingly big, honestly. And those are separated out between Venmo and PayPal. But Apple Pay has been huge. And I didn't break down exactly like what is the average gift between them. I know how much trouble I get in doing that, but I'm not totally sure how accurately I would have pulled those at the last minute. But yeah, the Apple Pay adding it in there is a big deal. I expect with the new form coming out, Google Pay will probably see a surprising, for me, amount of people using it. But if Apple Pay has gone that well, having a low friction experience like Google Pay is also going to be really important. So there you go. That is the breakdown. And a lot of customizations will go into it. Tomorrow's session is going to be a kind of mix. If you're not a pro coder, your eyes will glaze over most likely. There will still be a little bit of things that you can pick out here and there, but you're going to see a wall of code. And if you're not a coder, it's going to look like profanity. So just be aware of that. I would still say it's worth attending. If you're a coder, I am actually going to show you a little bit behind the veil, and there will be some usable code. I didn't put it on GitHub just because I want to go back to the idea that this is a thing that is great right now. It is having an impact, but it is also going to change fundamentally when they release the new system. So yeah, there will be walls of code for you to look at. I'm not releasing the entire thing on GitHub, but what I am going to do is break down how does the API call work? How do you get a team photo in there and a team quote when that doesn't really happen out of the box, right? How do you deal with asynchronous JavaScript? What are some of the tricks I've talked about in previous years that I used on this project? Whew, lot to go through there. I'm glad I was able to make through it all on time. So with that, let's see if there's any questions. And if not, we can return a little bit of time back to you. Yeah, it's always really surprising. You never know in advance exactly how things are going to go when you're turning on Venmo. I mean, we really anticipate Venmo doing really well. The biggest thing is when you're at a run walk event, actually having signage that has the QR code they'll actually send people over to Venmo, because that's really the way that people are wanting to use it, right? Lower the friction. The way the Venmo works on the Blackbaud checkout form as it is today, if you're on the desktop and you say, I'd like to use Venmo, going back to that previous screen here, you can see it pops up a QR code. So what you're supposed to do is go to our form, fill it out, hit use Venmo, then pull out your phone, point it at your screen, hit the button, then pull up Venmo, log in. Like, I don't know if anybody else is falling asleep as I'm explaining this. It's just not low friction, right? Whereas Apple Pay, you pull it up, you hit it, you're done. I mean, it's 25 seconds. All right, Jason's just launched a feedback survey. And again, plugging in here. I mean, check out the rest of the stuff. DNL Omnimedia is talking later in the week about some stuff. They do amazing work. Chariot has been a great boon to adding to our forum. They're going to be presenting later this week. And then I'll be talking tomorrow a little in the weeds at 2:15. But definitely take the survey and let me know what we can do in the future. If you've got any ideas for tomorrow, any questions you want to make sure we cover, also put it in there, and I'll make sure that we add it to the agenda. All right. I need some elevator music. Fill up the rest of this time. Oh, do we have this Q&A tab left? I don't see a Q&A tab. I see messages in chat. Jason's telling me we got some Q&A here. Yeah, put it in there. If a customer wanted to do some of these things, what would you recommend if they don't have a developer in-house? Working with a partner? Absolutely. One of the things I would say is, and I might even talk a little bit about this at BBCon. There may be actually in the September, we'll talk about it. Yes, I do, Bo. If you need to, you can hit me up. But I do consulting if needed. But the biggest thing is work with a partner who has a lot of experience in this, whether it's a consultant. Also talk in the community. If you're not a part of it, go to community.blackbaud.com and join into it, okay? There is a lot of conversation. Even just yesterday, there was a question about something that I was presenting here on how can you submit a survey. You can get great feedback and there are years of feedback you can look at. So always join community, talk to partners, and we are out of time. I don't know if I'm